Okay, in assignment 19, we're going to talk about savings accounts and the different types of savings accounts, but we're going to use this simple interest formula a lot in this section, in this unit. So make sure you read the reading assignment. So in this example here, Grace wants to deposit $5,000 in a certificate of deposit for a period of 2 years. She's comparing interest rates quoted by 3 local banks. So here's an interest rate that she was quoted. Here's an interest rate she was quoted. Here's one, and here's one. Well, 4 1/4%, 4 3/8%, 4.3%, and 4.22%. So part of this is going to be realizing where she can get the most interest. So we have to be able to decide which of these pays the most interest. Well, 4 1/4% is 4.25. 1 divided by 4 is 0.25. So the 4 wholes, and then 0.25%. 4 3/8%, there's the 4 wholes, and then 3 divided by 8 is 0.375. So if you arrange them in order, you could see that the eSave Bank is going to pay the most, which was the 4.375. That's the most out of any of the banks. So if you want to compare these from in descending order, that means the greatest to least, then you're going to have to convert these two fractions to compare them. This is 5.51%. 5.5%, well, 5.5%, that's 5.50%. 5 5/8%, take the 5/8, 5 divided by 8 is 0.625. So 5 5/8% is 5.625, and 5.625 would be the biggest out of all these. So this would be the biggest one, and then 5.6 would be the next biggest one. 5.51 would be the next biggest one. 5.5 would be the next, and then the smallest one would be 5.099%. So when you're trying to figure out which bank is paying more, you need to know. You got to be able to compare them, and the easiest way is to put them all into decimals. Okay. Raul's savings account, must have at least $500 or he's charged a $4 fee. His balance is $716 when he withdraws $225. So when he withdraws the $225, that leaves him with $491.23. That's his balance, which means that his balance fell below the $500 minimum. So he's going to also be charged a $4 service fee because he fell below the minimum amount required. So his current balance would be the $491.23 minus the $4, which would leave him with $487.23. So if we look at this check your understanding, May has $891 in her account. A $7 fee is charged each month that the balance is below $750. She withdraws $315. So $891 minus $315 is going to give us her balance. So $891 minus $315 is her balance, $576, which means she fell below the $750. If she makes no deposits or withdrawals for the next X month, express her balance algebraically. Well, her balance would be the $576 minus the $7 fee for X number of months. So she's got $576, and she's going to take away from that $7 for every month that she's below that minimum balance of $750. All right. This is where we're going to use this formula, I equals PRT. Mitchell deposits $1,200. It pays 4.5% simple interest. He keeps the money in account for 3 years without any deposits. So what this formula says is the interest that you earn depends on the amount of principal that you put in. That's the dollar amount you put in, times the rate as a decimal, times the time. How long you keep it invested. So Mitchell's depositing $1,200. There's the principal, times the rate. 4.5% is a decimal. We would move the decimal 2 places, so 0.045, times 3, the number of years. If you multiply all that together, you get 162. So that's the amount of interest that he would earn. So let's look at this one. How much simple interest is earned on $4,000? That's the principal. So if interest equals principal times rate times time, the amount of interest you earn is $4,000 times the rate, which is 5.2%. Move the decimal 2 places, so 0.052, times the time, which is 3.5 or 3.5. And if you multiply all these together, you're going to get the amount of interest that's earned. So 4,000 times 0.052 times 3.5 would be $728 in interest. Okay. How much simple interest does $2,000 earn in 7 months at an interest rate of 5%? So the same thing. Interest equals principal times time times rate. Okay. 7 months is not a whole year. It's only a part of a year. So you can see for the time, there's 12 months in a year, and we're only talking about 7 months. So for the time number that they used in the formula, interest equals principal times rate times time, they used 7 out of 12. So if it's not a whole number year, then you can use a fraction like this one. How much simple interest would $800 earn? There's my principal. In 300 days, there's my time. In a non-leap year at an interest rate of 5.71, there's my rate. So if interest equals principal times rate times time, the interest is equal to the principal, what I start with, times the rate. 5.71 as a decimal would be 0.0571 because we have to move the decimal 2 places. And then the time is 300 days, but we got to put it in terms of years, or in this case, days in a year. There's 365 days in a year, so this fraction would be 300 out of 365. So when we multiply all those together, you got to get that. You got to figure out what 300 over 365 is first. 300 divided by 365 is 0.8219. Then I'm going to multiply that times 0.0571. And then I'm going to multiply that times 800. And this would be the amount of interest that is earned. $37.50. We're going to round that to 2 places, and that 5 would push that 4 up because we're talking dollars and cents. So $37.55. All right, moving on. We got a few examples. They're all going to be the same. Sometimes we're going to use this formula, but we're not going to be finding the interest. We're going to be finding one of the other variables. For example, how much principal must be deposited in a 2-year simple interest account that pays 3.25% and earns $300 in interest? So I'm looking for how much principal. So if I take this formula and I solve it for the principal, well, that's easy. I would just need to divide by RT. So I have the interest divided by R times T equals the principal. That's what I'm asked to find, how much principal. So then I can just fill in these numbers into this version of the formula. So the interest, $300, divided by the rate, which is 0.0325, times the time, which was a 2-year. If I figure out this number, that's going to give me the principal. So you're using the same formula, you're just rearranging it. So I need to do 0.0325 times 2 first. So this number gives me 0.065. 300 divided by 0.065 would be $4,615.38. So the question was how much principal to earn $300 in 2 years at that rate. That would be the answer. That's how much they would need to deposit. Example 6. How long will it take $10,000 to double at 11% simple interest? Well, if I'm doubling 10,000, that means that would be 20,000 in the account, which means if I start with 10 and I turn it into 20, then I've made 10,000. So the interest is 10,000. because 10,000 in interest plus 10,000 what I start with would give me 20,000, and then my rate is 11%. And I'm looking for the time. So if interest equals principal times rate times time, and I'm looking for the time, I can solve this equation for time by simply dividing by principal and rate. And now I have time equals interest over PR, and I can fill these numbers in. Interest was 10,000, principal was 10,000, and the rate was 11%, as a decimal would be 0.11, and if I solve this, this will give me the time. So I'm going to do the bottom first. The 10,000 times 0.11 is 1,100. So 10,000 divided by 1,100 would give me the time. 9.09 years. Okay. Here's another one. Marcos deposited $500 in a 2.5-year simple interest account. He wants to earn $200 in interest. What interest rate must the account pay? Interest equals PRT. If I'm looking for the rate, then I simply divide by PT. And now I have the rate equals the interest divided by PT. Interest, he wants to earn $200 in interest. The principal was $500, what he started with, and the time was 2.5 years. So when I do all this math here, that's going to give me the rate. Figuring out the denominator first, that would be 1250. So 200 over 1250 is 0.16, and as a percent would be 16%. Okay, that is lesson 19.